Okay, so the attack on Stalingrad, and you can see Stalingrad here if you're looking at the screen. Again, it's on the Volga River. And one of the ways you might want to think about the significance of this campaign, think about if the United States was invaded and the enemy army on the East Coast, and the enemy army had gotten to the Mississippi River. It's somewhat an analogous situation. By attacking Stalingrad, the German army is really in the heart of Mother Russia, one of the most significant rivers in Russia. And of course, the name Stalingrad has tremendous symbolic meaning as well. You know, it's Stalingrad, named after Stalin. So what Hitler does, and I won't go too much into the details of this, in part because I don't do a great job on real military details. But remember, Army Group South is the army, the portion of the German army that was responsible for the southern part of Russia. And remember, it's Army Group North, Center, and South. Okay, North is around Leningrad, Center is the Moscow thrust, and South is Ukraine and the Caucasus. So what happens is Army Group South is divided up in basically in two. So Army Group South, it's divided up into Army Group A, and I'm just going to say right now, Army Group A is not that important for this story. It's the part of the German army that moves into the Caucasus Mountain that attempts to capture Soviet oil in essence. And they do make significant gains in the summer of 1942, but it's very, very thin. It's just too far to go. It's the logistics of getting supplies to this part of the Soviet Union are just too much. So although Army Group A, which again, Army Group A is part of the larger Army Group South, although it makes significant gains, it can't hold on to the gains. Okay, so that's just the bottom line. Much more important is Army Group B. So again, Army Group South, the German Army Group South is divided in two. It's divided into A and B. A is the portion of the German army that goes into the oil-producing areas of the Caucasus. They make great gains, but they can't hold on to it. It's just too far to go. It's too much of a reach. But now we're going to focus on Army Group B, which is really the significant part of the German army for the Stalingrad offensive. So Army Group B is made up of the German 6th Army and the 4th Panzer Army. And it's Army Group B that is going to make a sweep towards Stalingrad. Okay, so Army Group B, which is made up of the 6th Army and the 4th Panzer Army, that is the portion of the German forces that attack Stalingrad. Now, the other significant thing about Army Group B was that German allies are very involved in this invasion as well, especially to the south, the Romanian army, and also the Italian army is part of this larger attack on Stalingrad. And what will prove to be very, very significant is that the Italian army and the Romanian army is on the southern flank of the 6th Army, and the Italian army is on the northern flank. And this is the weakest part of the German attack. The Romanians to the south and the Italians to the north. And when the Russians counterattack, that's where they counterattack, on the flanks of the German army. So you have this major attack through Ukraine, this thrust towards Stalingrad. The commanding general of the 6th Army was Frederick Paulus. He's the commander of the 6th Army, and he is the German commander that leads the attack on Stalingrad. So Stalingrad, Operation Blue jumps off in 1942, and it runs into problems initially. There there's a Soviet counterattack along the way, which is defeated pretty quickly, but it slows down the German army as it makes its way towards Stalingrad, and this is going to prove significant later. And but on the whole, the Wehrmacht, the German army, as it moves towards Stalingrad, it's been resupplied. It has equipment, it has firepower, it has experience. Its soldiers are excellent tactical fighters. Sadly, just sad to say, they're probably the best tactical fighters in the complete European theater. And the Red Army is still getting its act together. Lend-Lease supplies are coming in, but the Red Army still hasn't quite gotten its act together. And so after a brief interruption, the Sixth Army under Paulus marches towards Stalingrad. And so if you're looking at a map I've circled, you can see the Sixth Army there, and it's heading towards Stalingrad. Okay, the Sixth Army. And it looks like Stalingrad is going to, it's going to fall pretty quickly. The Soviet forces, after some resistance, start falling back very, very quickly in a pretty organized retreat, actually, towards Stalingrad. So if you're looking at it, if you're looking at the map here, you have the Sixth Army making this thrust towards Stalingrad. The Soviet army is falling back towards Stalingrad. And Hitler does something really stupid, which is going to be a recurrent theme in this part of the course. As part of the attack on Stalingrad, the Fourth Panzer Army, and the Panzer Army, that was a tank group, Hitler decides that Stalingrad is going to fall easily, that the Soviets are too disorganized. And what he does is he takes the Fourth Panzer Army, the tank part of the thrust against Stalingrad, and he orders it into the Caucasus. Hitler gets overconfident that Stalingrad is going to fall, so he takes the tank portion of the attack against Stalingrad, and he orders it into the Caucasus, where he thinks that it's needed. And this really screws up the march on Stalingrad, because the Fourth Panzer Army gets in the way of the Sixth Army as it marches towards Stalingrad, because the Fourth Panzer Army is going south while the Sixth Army is going east. So you have kind of this self-inflicted wound. Hitler shoots himself in the foot. He sends his tanks towards the Caucasus, where the Fourth Panzer Army, he takes them away temporarily from the Stalingrad thrust. He sends them south, where they cross the path of the Sixth Army heading towards Stalingrad. And it just was a mess. It just was a mess. It caused all kinds of logistical problems. It caused all kinds of problems with fuel, and it slows down the advance on Stalingrad. And the kicker is that Hitler changes his mind again, and he has the Fourth Panzer Army rejoin the Sixth Army. So it's kind of nuts. Hitler is sending his panzer group, his tanks, he's sending them kind of all over the place. And what he does is he gives the Soviet Union precious time to regroup in Stalingrad, to think about a defense of Stalingrad. And he slows down his own offensive. So I'll just repeat that, because there's a lot of jargon there and it's probably confusing. So what you have is the Sixth Army, which is mostly infantry, is moving towards Stalingrad under General Paulus. And that's the main thrust towards Stalingrad. The Fourth Panzer Army, which was supposed to assist the Sixth Army, Hitler decides that Stalingrad is going to fall, that the Soviets are very disorganized, and so what Hitler says to the Fourth Panzer Army, he orders it south across the path of the Sixth Army to go to the Caucasus, and it's just a big traffic jam basically in this part of the Soviet Union. So the Fourth Panzer Army goes south in the way of the Sixth Army, slows down the Sixth Army, halts the Sixth Army. There's fuel problems. And then Hitler changes his mind and he decides, you know what? I'm going to take the Fourth Panzer Army. I'm going to take my tanks and I'm going to have them rejoin the Sixth Army. So Hitler's just kind of like he's playing Risk or something. And but for the troops on the ground, this is just a real mess. And the upshot is Hitler slows down his own advance on Stalingrad unnecessarily and gives the Soviets time to regroup in Stalingrad and to think about how they're going to defend the city.